China just locked 12 American CEOs in a Beijing hotel for 72 hours. No lawyers, no calls, $847 billion in market value. Gone. But here's what Wall Street won't tell you. This isn't a trade war anymore. The setup. It started 3 weeks earlier, December 1st, 2025. Congress passes the Taiwan Defense Authorization Act. $19 billion in military aid. THAAD missile systems. F-35 training programs. And the kicker, a clause allowing U.S. troops to permanently station in Taiwan for advisory roles. Beijing's response came in 14 hours, not through diplomatic channels, not through UN speeches, through corporate boardrooms. December 2nd, 2025, China's Ministry of State Security issues administrative guidance to 47 American corporations operating in China. Voluntary compliance reviews required within 30 days. Translation: we're auditing everything, and we'll find something. The companies targeted weren't random. Apple, $68 billion annual revenue from China. Tesla, Shanghai Gigafactory produces 50% of global output. Qualcomm, 95% of smartphone chips go through Chinese assembly. These weren't businesses, these were leverage points. The trap springs December 15th, 2025. The voluntary reviews become mandatory detentions. Apple's Greater China CEO, Michael Chen, is stopped at Shanghai Pudong Airport. His passport, confiscated. His phone, seized. His location, Shanghai State Security Bureau Detention Center. 12 hours later, Tesla's Asia-Pacific director, Sarah Matthews, detained in Shenzhen. Same protocol. No charges, no access to U.S. consular staff. By December 18th, 12 executives from 9 companies are in custody. The official charge, when it finally comes, suspected violations of counter-espionage laws and national security regulations. The evidence, never specified, because this isn't about evidence, it's about pressure. The Wall Street panic. December 19th, 2025. Markets open in New York. Apple drops 11% in 90 minutes. Tesla falls 18%. The Nasdaq sheds $2.1 trillion in value before trading halts kick in. But here's the real chaos: emergency board meetings. Every Fortune 500 company with China exposure is asking the same question: are we next? And the answer terrifies them. Probably. One Morgan Stanley analyst, speaking anonymously, China just proved they can destroy shareholder value with a phone call. No bombs, no sanctions, just detentions. The executive calls start flooding Washington. The corporate rebellion. December 20th, 2025. Tim Cook's chief lobbyist schedules an emergency meeting with Secretary of State Marco Rubio. The message, according to 2 people in the room: you want us to support Taiwan policy? Get our people out first. Rubio's response: we don't negotiate with hostage takers. The lobbyists counter: then watch your Taiwan bill collapse when we pull $400 billion in annual lobbying support. And he wasn't bluffing. Within 48 hours, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, representing 3 million businesses, releases a statement calling for diplomatic de-escalation and reconsideration of provocative military commitments. Translation: abandon Taiwan or lose corporate America. The Pentagon nightmare. But here's what makes this truly dangerous. The military-industrial complex runs on corporate supply chains. December 21st, 2025. A classified Pentagon briefing leaks to the Wall Street Journal. The topic: supply chain vulnerabilities in Taiwan defense posture. The conclusion: 68% of critical components for U.S. weapon systems have Chinese supply chain exposure. That means rare earth minerals for missiles, semiconductors for guidance systems, battery components for drones. If China cuts access, American military production collapses within 6 to 9 months. One defense contractor CEO, off the record: we've been warning about this for years. Nobody listened because China was too profitable. Now the bill is due. The prisoner stories. Meanwhile, inside detention, the executives are breaking. Leaked accounts from family members paint a grim picture. 16-hour interrogations, sleep deprivation, psychological pressure. No torture. China's smarter than that. But the message is clear: confess to something, or this never ends. Michael Chen's wife tells CNN he's been interrogated 47 times in 12 days. The questions aren't about espionage. They're about corporate strategy, lobbying efforts, political contributions. China is data mining American corporate influence networks in real time. And here's the kicker. Everything these executives say is admissible in Chinese courts with zero due process protections. One international lawyer? They're building legal cases to nationalize these companies if Washington doesn't fold. The European fracture. December 23, 2025. The crisis goes global. Germany's Volkswagen CEO detained in Beijing for unrelated tax review. France's LVMH Asia director held in Shanghai for customs violations. The pattern is obvious. China is targeting every Western country with Taiwan ties. But Europe's response splits down the middle. Germany's new coalition government, terrified of losing BMW and Mercedes access to Chinese markets, calls for restraint and dialogue. France's Macron, facing domestic pressure, makes a stunning statement. Taiwan is not worth European economic suicide. NATO solidarity, gone. Poland's foreign minister fires back. So we abandon democracies when dictators take hostages. This is Munich, 1938. The Atlantic Alliance is fracturing in real time. The Beijing calculation. Here's what Xi Jinping understood that Washington didn't. Corporations have no national loyalty. They have shareholders, quarterly earnings, fiduciary duties. And when Beijing offers a choice, abandon Taiwan or lose market access, the math is brutal. China represents $18 trillion in economic output. Taiwan represents $790 billion. From a pure profit perspective, Taiwan doesn't even register. December 26, 2025. Internal Apple documents leak showing scenario planning for accelerated China dependency reduction. Timeline 7 to 10 years. Translation: Apple won't sacrifice China profits for Taiwan. Not now, probably not ever, and Apple isn't alone. The Washington split back in DC, the crisis triggers a civil war. Traditionalists, Rubio, defense hawks, Taiwan supporters demand economic retaliation, full decoupling, secondary sanctions on any company cooperating with Chinese detention protocols. Pragmatists, Treasury officials, economic advisors, moderate Republicans warn this triggers global depression. One CEA analysis, leaked to Politico, full China decoupling costs 8.4 million American jobs and $3.7 trillion in GDP over 36 months. Trump characteristically keeps everyone guessing. Publicly, China will pay a price. Privately, according to three sources, how much does Taiwan actually matter? The corporate ultimatum. December 28, 2025. The moment everything changes. A joint letter arrives at the White House, signed by CEOs of 23 Fortune 100 companies. The text, obtained by the Static Dispatch. We support American values. We support democracy. But we cannot support policies that deliberately destroy shareholder value and American jobs. Unless detained personnel are released within 72 hours, we are suspending all political contributions and lobbying support for current Taiwan legislation. It's not quite a threat, but it's not quite not a threat. And it works. The backroom deal. December 30th, 2025. A U.S. delegation arrives in Beijing, not State Department, Treasury. The negotiations happen in a Shanghai hotel, away from press. The offer, according to two participants: release the executives. We quietly shelve the permanent troop deployment clause in the Taiwan bill. China's counteroffer: release the executives, you shelve the entire bill. The U.S. delegation walks out, then China makes a move nobody anticipated. The nuclear option, January 2nd, 2026. China announces temporary suspension of rare earth mineral exports to ensure domestic security needs. Wall Street implodes. Rare earths are essential for everything: smartphones, electric vehicles, wind turbines, military systems. China controls 80% of global supply. One commodity trader, they just turned off the tap to the entire Western industrial base. Within 6 hours, the White House calls Beijing back. China just cut rare earth exports. The West has 90 days of reserves. But here's the real crisis. Trump is about to make a decision that ends the American century. The pressure mounts January 3rd, 2026. Emergency NATO meeting in Brussels. The agenda: unified response to Chinese hostage crisis and economic coercion. The result: total failure. Germany wants negotiation. Poland wants confrontation. France wants strategic autonomy. Translation: every country for themselves. The UK, post-Brexit and economically desperate, quietly signals willingness to recognize Chinese sphere of influence in Asia if trade continues. The Atlantic Alliance isn't just fractured, it's shattered. One former NATO ambassador: We just watched 75 years of Western unity die over corporate quarterly earnings. The American split deepens back in Washington. The Civil War goes nuclear. January 5th, 2026. Rubio resigns as Secretary of State. His resignation letter, leaked within hours. I cannot serve an administration that prioritizes corporate profits over democratic values and allied commitments. The MAGA base erupts in celebration. The neocon establishment calls it betrayal. But here's what nobody's saying publicly. Rubio didn't jump, he was pushed. Because Trump already made his decision. The deal, January 6th, 2026. Trump announces a framework agreement with China. The terms, all detained executives released within 48 hours, Taiwan Defense Authorization Act amendments, permanent troop deployment clause removed, aid reduced from $19 billion to $4 billion, U.S. acknowledges one China principle with enhanced clarity, rare earth exports resume immediately, the corporate CEOs exhale, markets soar, Apple gains 14% in one day, but Taiwan, abandoned. The Taiwanese reaction, January 7th, 2026. Taiwan's president, Lai Ching-te, gives an address that historians will study for decades. America promised protection. We believed them. We were wrong. Taiwan learned what Ukraine learned. American guarantees last until corporate profits are threatened. He announces emergency measures. Military conscription extended from 4 months to 18 months. Defense budget tripled. And the phrase that detonates across Asia, all strategic options remain on the table. Translation, Taiwan is considering nuclear weapons. The nuclear domino, January 10th, 2026. Japanese Prime Minister addresses the Diet with extraordinary language. For 70 years, we relied on American nuclear umbrella. Recent events suggest that umbrella has holes. Japan must reconsider its defense posture. The subtext is obvious. Japan has nuclear reactors. They have plutonium. They have delivery systems. They could build nuclear weapons in 6 to 12 months. And they're not alone. South Korea's defense minister makes similar statements 3 days later. Australia's conservative opposition calls for nuclear capability review. The non-proliferation regime is collapsing, one former IAEA official. We're watching the nuclear order unravel in real time. And it started with corporate hostages in Beijing. The intelligence picture. But here's what's happening behind closed doors. January 15th, 2026, CIA briefs the president on something terrifying. China didn't just take hostages, they extracted data. Every executive detained had their devices cloned, emails, communications, strategic plans. China now has comprehensive intelligence on corporate lobbying strategies, congressional influence networks, supply chain vulnerabilities, financial leverage points. They've mapped American power structure through corporate espionage disguised as hostage-taking. One NSA analyst. This wasn't a crisis. It was an intelligence operation with geopolitical benefits. The corporate reckoning. Meanwhile, the backlash against corporate America explodes. January 18th, 2026. Senator Josh Hawley introduces the Economic Sovereignty Act. The provisions, criminal penalties for CEOs who lobby against national security interests, mandatory divestment from China for any company receiving federal contracts, cap on China revenue as percentage of total revenue, 15%. It's radical. It's probably unconstitutional. And it has 41 co-sponsors in 72 hours. Because American voters are furious. Polls show 73% of Americans believe corporations betrayed the country for profit. Trust in big business hits record lows. One populist organizer, the left hates them for labor practices. The right hates them for China kowtowing. They've lost everyone. The Beijing Victory Lap, February 1st, 2026. Xi Jinping gives a speech to the Politburo Standing Committee. Leaked excerpts show triumphalism. We demonstrated that American capitalism contains the seeds of its own defeat. Their corporations became our leverage. Their free market became our weapon. He's not wrong. China just proved that in the 21st century, economic interdependence isn't peace insurance. It's a hostage situation waiting to happen, and the lesson is being studied everywhere. The global realignment. February-March 2026. The world reorganizes. The Asian split. Taiwan accelerates indigenous defense production. Reaches out to Israel for nuclear consultation. Japan begins security review. Everyone knows is nuclear weapons program South Korea hedges, opening back channels to Beijing, Philippines, seeing American unreliability, cuts defense agreements, the European fracture. Germany announces economic realism policy, prioritizing trade over values. Poland and Baltics form separate security pact, pursue nuclear options. France declares strategic autonomy, meaning EU independence from US, and willingness to cut deals with China. The American isolation. Corporate America openly lobbies against confrontational foreign policy. Public support for overseas commitments collapses. America First evolves from slogan to reality by necessity, not choice. The Taiwanese desperation. March 15, 2026. Intelligence intercepts reveal Taiwan is shopping for nuclear technology. Approaches to Israel, declined. Pakistan, under consideration. North Korea, seriously, via third parties. The desperation is palpable. One Taiwanese official, anonymously, "We have 18 months before China feels confident enough to invade. We need deterrence before then. If that means the bomb, so be it." The nightmare scenario Pentagon warned about is happening. The corporate colonization. But here's the truly insidious development. China's hostage model goes mainstream. April 2026. American companies start self-regulating to avoid future detentions. Internal policies emerge. Mandatory political contribution reviews to ensure no anti-China candidates supported lobbying restrictions on Taiwan, Xinjiang, Hong Kong issues, employee social media monitoring for brand risk statements about China. One tech company literally creates a China sensitivity review board for all executive communications. Corporate America has been colonized, not through invasion, through leverage. The economic consequences, May 2026. The economic data starts coming in. US-China trade down 34%, American manufacturing reshoring up 12%. Sounds good until you see the timeline, 7 to 10 years to full implementation. Unemployment in tech sector up 8.4%. The decoupling everyone talked about is happening, but messily, painfully, and unevenly. Midwestern factory towns see job growth. Silicon Valley sees collapse. The coastal heartland divide explodes, and politically, it's toxic. Democrats blame Trump for corporate surrender. Republicans blame Biden-era dependencies. Both are right. Neither has solutions. The military reality, June 2026. A devastating Pentagon report leaks. Title: Post-China Defense Posture Assessment. Key finding: U.S. military production incapable of sustained Taiwan defense without Chinese supply chains. Estimated reconstitution timeline, 6 to 8 years. Translation: if China invades Taiwan tomorrow, America couldn't sustain a defense for more than 4 to 6 months. The eagle has been declawed by its own corporations. The next crisis, July 2026. China makes its next move, not military, economic, announcement. To ensure supply chain security, critical rare earth processing will be restricted to domestic use and approved partners. Approved partners means countries that don't support Taiwan, don't host US bases, and don't criticize Chinese human rights. Europe folds immediately. Germany, France, Italy all sign strategic partnership frameworks that subtly undermine Taiwan. NATO is now officially dead in everything but name. The American choice, August 2026. Trump faces the decision that defines his legacy. Option A, full confrontation, total decoupling. Accept massive economic pain for strategic independence. Option B, managed retreat. Accept Chinese sphere of influence in Asia. Preserve corporate profits and jobs. There's no option C. He chooses B. The announcement comes wrapped in America First rhetoric. We're prioritizing American jobs over foreign conflicts. The result, America officially cedes the Western Pacific to Chinese control. The aftermath, September 2026. The New World Order crystallizes. China controls Asia. Europe is neutral. America is isolated. The Pax Americana that lasted 75 years ended not with nuclear war or military defeat, but with corporate balance sheets and detained CEOs. The final question. Taiwan is alone. Japan is nuclearizing. South Korea is hedging. American credibility is gone. And the question nobody wants to answer. If you can be coerced by detaining 12 executives, were you ever really a superpower? Beijing answered. Washington is still pretending it didn't hear, but the world heard, and it's reorganizing accordingly.